Hi guys, it's Monday evening in New York. It's the end of the day here of our first day properly of this in ISPA. Today the fellows have had their seminar day, our first kind of opportunity to touch base with each other and to have a little kind of precursor to the main congress itself for the fellows, a much smaller group to come together and to begin to unpick the issues and the themes of the programme and what we're going to be facing up with, the themes being arts, power and politics. So it's been a really valuable day. It's really valuable to finally get into the ISPA Fellowship programme and to begin to directly understand what it is that the programme intends to do and who people on the programme are. I think that's been particularly difficult to kind of understand what other people's backgrounds and stories are from having only met Annette and Nasli, the other English fellows, before we travelled off. Not knowing people from the more kind of global perspective, what their backgrounds are and what their practices are, has been quite difficult to really place and contextualise where we fit in for it. So it's been great to have a group come together today and to get to know each other and to start unpicking the theme of the week. So we had some introductions first thing in the morning, some speeches to welcome us to the kind of ISPA family, as it were, and then we did introductions as a cohort, as kind of each had 60 seconds to introduce ourselves, where we were from, but also to talk about issues that we face, that we encounter specific in our cultural contexts, and also to discuss if at all they've changed in recent times with lots that's happening in the world kind of geopolitically, as is always a constant reference in the UK of having Brexit, and in the US we've had Donald Trump being elected as the president-elect. So it was kind of interesting to hear from a lot of the kind of things people were talking about. The regional contexts were quite specific, but the issues, quite a lot of them felt quite universal, whilst the ways in which we would speak about issues and the context they existed in were quite unique. The underpinning issues, kind of access, diversity, freedom of expression, they would come up frequently within the cohort. So that was a really valuable experience, personally for me, I think, to kind of hear these other stories coming in and going, okay, now I see how as a global community of fellows we kind of come together and we share these challenges and these values, whilst our kind of context is different. The issues we face are very prescient in the global kind of community. So it was good to begin the day by getting together and beginning to establish ourselves as a community with shared passion and shared kind of challenges and shared desire to change the world and use the arts to do so. So after that we then had breakout sessions, multiple sessions. There were 3 sessions in all during the day after that, and 2 of them were breakout sessions. So the first breakout session that I attended was regarding diverse leadership and kind of what it is, what we mean when we say diversity. So we had Simon Mellor from the Arts Council of England, and Ravi Jain from One Up Theatre in Canada, who were kind of leading that session, who were speaking in that session. And it was a really good session. I found, particularly in terms of unpicking what we mean when we say diversity, and I think again there was a certain degree to which the regional context in which we work means that our interpretation of that was quite different. There was a lot of focus naturally with Simon being there, of talking about Arts Council England and the kind of context in which we live. Which we work, and obviously much of that was very familiar to us from working in that context, but a lot of it was from a unique perspective, I guess, and looked at in a slightly different way because of the fact that we were talking in this kind of global context. So it was really fascinating to hear how some things that we feel are kind of the given and the status quo, I suppose, are completely different to people's practices and expectations elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, it was fascinating. We talked about the creative case for diversity in the UK, but we also talked about things like the gathering of data and quality metrics, and talking about artists and an audience as well, and you know, what diversity is, and the leadership thing in particular, about where in theatre and performance in the UK in the arts, where the lack of diversity is in leadership. You know, leadership predominantly still being white middle class males of kind of 50 to 60 years of age, and this kind of sense that Simon's mentioned previously when we met, about this kind of almost crisis in leadership of going, but where are the next generation able to get in? And there's a whole conversation about the lack of development and movement for practitioners and arts leaders, and how many people are having to go out and establish their own companies to give themselves the experience to build themselves up, and then when the big jobs will come up, those people will move along and kind of shift sideways or shift upwards. But then what happens to those organisations who they're setting up? You know, and are we doing it wrong by focusing on the established hierarchy and focusing on filling those roles and developing people for those, or should we be focusing more on bringing people up from that grassroots and what people are setting up? I mean, there's loads to take away from it. It was a really kind of good provocation to have at that kind of early stage in the day. We then had the second breakout sessions. There were three interesting topics here. There's one about international collaboration. One was about new money and finding different models of funding, and the third, which is what I went to, was about reconciling growth, capacity, and sustainability. And yeah, it was Kathy Boyd from Cryptic and Susan Feldman from St Anne's Warehouse were leading that session. Now, I have to be honest and say, for those of you who don't know, I have a hearing impairment. I wear a hearing aid on my left side. I quite often don't find that to be a major issue. I've been able to kind of progress professionally in the last kind of 10 or so years since it's been diagnosed, absolutely fine, but quite often I find there are spaces with background noise, which can be quite disruptive, and actually, unfortunately, this was a session where there were points at which I lost elements of the conversation because the space we were in was a lot of background noise, and unfortunately as well, some people spoke quite quietly, and there were certain things that I missed. Now, it's unfortunate, but actually the conversation, it was interesting to hear. It was very much about people's experiences, about Kathy and Susan's experiences, particularly in terms of their organisations, like how they developed, and them reflecting on their experiences to kind of help others in terms of developing their own organisations and what growth really means. So whilst that session, maybe I didn't necessarily get so much out of as I did in the first session, there were still some useful things, some interesting kind of conversations that came up, and you know, if nothing else, there's the value of hearing from the different people's stories and getting to know people a bit better and where they're coming from. I think it's something that perhaps maybe will there'll be more conversation around in kind of future days of the Congress. But it was also a good opportunity just to hear, like I say, about other people's backgrounds and what they're working in. And it was afterwards, Annette and Nasli had gone to the other two sessions, so we all kind of had an opportunity as the English Fellows to kind of touch base and talk about those different sessions, which was really nice to actually go. We all kind of went to something quite different that was interesting to us, but we could share as a cohort, I guess. And then we had a kind of final session, which was a long table session, where we all came together as a group, and there was a kind of table in the middle, and there was a conversation, and this was about arts, power and politics, so the same main themes, and talking about what those kind of things are in the context we're working in. And it began at the table. Some people were sat at the table in the middle of the rest of the group, and conversation happened in that table, and people could step up and join the table and join the conversation, but other people could sit back and listen and could kind of step up and join in at the time it felt relevant. And I think to me the model felt quite similar to something like Devotion Disgruntled, and this kind of open space idea of kind of being a butterfly is always the kind of the thing that they say at D&D of kind of you can kind of flitter around between groups and whoever's there is the right person kind of thing. But that was a really kind of fascinating session as well. In terms of how it grew, it really felt like as more the conversation progressed, I think people began to find their kind of passion and their kind of hopes and fears and their positive and negative feelings about what we were talking about. And there was a big element of conversation about kind of language and what the words mean and how we refer, even just the kind of the questioning and the grammatical use of commas and ands was kind of, it seems such a minor thing to explain now, but just kind of this thing of how we talk about how we use language is such a powerful thing in terms of how it changes meaning. And I kind of sat at the table at a point and said, we were asked a question at the beginning as a group, and the question was, do we feel we have power? I think basically everyone stood up to kind of, the question was, do you stand up if you think you have power? And everyone stood up, and it was interesting because I was kind of reflecting back on how the conversation had gone. I said we all interpreted that as being a positive thing. That we have power, that's a positive thing. We can use that, I guess, to enact change. But then a lot of the conversation was about power being used to restrict discussion and freedom of expression and these ideas of power being, the language of taking back control and make America great again that we've had in the UK and US in terms of the referendum and the election, and power being used as a means of kind of control and just those kind of use of words there was quite different, and there was a real kind of sense that we need to look deeper into the meaning of the questions and the words than just taking them at face value. But it was really good to kind of have those moments where people did get fired up, and to kind of go, okay, now we're beginning to find our voices a bit, and being, I think as well, being liberated to do that in this fellowship session rather than being in the larger congress was really good. We had that freedom of space to express ourselves in the context of we were all being there in the same place rather than being at the congress where we've gone and we've paid the $1,500 registration fee and maybe there's an element of marketplace about some elements of congress and we didn't have that. I think that was quite good to give us that freedom of space to discuss. And then came, of course, the typical kind of end of day aspect of these kind of things, where we went to the pub. So the Australian Fellows kind of hosted people at a bar in the corner, and then conversation continued again, and it was very much more informal. But we had various conversations. I mean, us as the English Fellows, we sat and kind of touched base quite a bit, and we had conversations kind of with Erwin, who's the artistic director of ISPA, and Rebecca Dawson, who's previous fellow from the UK, had talked to us, and that was quite nice for us to talk about how it had been for us so far, and it was really interesting to have other people come up to us and kind of say, I guess in a way we inadvertently kind of separate ourselves off from other groups, which were a bit more mixed. But people coming up to us and just saying it was really nice to get to meet us and to get to hear what we had to say, which was really flattering and kind of feels to feel like we're very welcome in this community so early was fantastic. But then we did go in with the rest of the group and kind of touch base with other people, and when the group requests kind of thinned out a little bit, and it was really nice to informally kind of get to know each other a bit more and not under this kind of pressure of the bigger conversations. So already it feels like prior to us going into the first day of Congress tomorrow, we've already begun to, as the English Fellows, get to bed into this community and feel a part of it, and that's a really, really important thing, I think, to begin this process. If it had taken a while to get into it, I think it would have been very challenging to really be able to make the most of the experience. But I think to have gone in at day one and to being welcomed so openly and so warmly by people, and to be encouraged to use our voices was great. And meeting so many lovely people whose backgrounds are so different and yet so in many ways so similar to our own was fantastic. And kind of really looking forward to seeing how the rest of the week progresses now. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to take away from today, and you know, I've barely feel like I scraped the surface of the conversations that actually happened today. You know, I'm reflecting on this at the end of quite an intensive day, and there's probably things I've misremembered or haven't remembered that feel really pertinent and important. So apologies if any of that is the case, but it's kind of just processing this amount of information is quite it's quite a lot to kind of go through, and knowing that we're going to go into the big congress tomorrow as well is yeah, it's there's a lot of kind of stimuli going on and kind of firing around at the moment. So, but it's great. I mean, it's fantastic to have been able to come across and already go day one. There's so much to take away already, and to be able to know, I'll be able to reflect on this for weeks to come at least already, and that's day one. So with days 2, 3, and 4, I mean, I'm probably going to spend forever trying to process it all. But that's great. It's great to be provoked and to be challenged, and really looking forward to the next few days. So yeah. So like I say, we start the big congress tomorrow, which I think is going to be a much different kettle of fish because there's more people around. But we now have this kind of community feel of the fellows, which is really fantastic. And yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how day 2 goes, and to reflect on that and to see how it relates to day 1. So obviously I'll let you guys know how that goes. And yeah, and I hope this has been giving you a sense of how the day has gone and what ISPA is a bit more. I mean, I certainly feel like I have a better idea of it, and hopefully I've been able to put that across to you guys a little bit. So you know, again, as ever, if there's any questions you might have about anything, just let me know. I'll do my best to answer as best I can, to kind of demystify this process a little bit. So yeah, but for now, so yeah, now is a chance to try and sleep whilst all these thoughts fire around in my head before we start the big congress tomorrow. So fantastic. It's been really great and really eye-opening and inspiring and challenging, and just really looking forward to the next few days. So I will speak to you guys tomorrow.